Andover Planning Board meeting will come to order for Tuesday, January 3rd. We have a number, Rebecca, right, a number of the public hearings are going to be continued. 30 Ironwood Road, 1975 Salem Street, they're both continued.
That's correct.
We are going to talk on the 575 Turnpike Street if the applicant comes in. Why don't we go to the discussions first, and then we'll come back.
Okay. The first discussion item is the selection process for a master plan committee. So this will be the committee that selects the committee that will then work on the master plan. So this is just the selection portion for the actual committee itself. 2 members from the Board of Selectmen are being nominated, and 2 members from the Planning Board will be nominated, and then the Economic and Community Development Director, Eric Kafori, will be the 5th member. So we need to make 2 nominations from the Planning Board.
Now, how many members of the Planning Board are going to be on the actual committee?
I don't believe,
I heard none.
Which I'm perplexed by, because it's our bylaw.
I'm not,
And under the state
State
law,
law.
it says that it's supposed to be under the auspices of the Planning Board that master plans get done.
so I'm not too sure exactly who is going to be selected by that selection committee, and whether or not a board member will be sitting on that, or a number of board members will be sitting on that. For now, the town manager just asked us to select members to have those sit on the board, the selection committee, and I can find out more information.
And how many members are going to be on the actual?
So it's 2 members from the Board of Selectmen?
No, but on the master plan committee itself.
I'm not too sure.
I was
Yeah,
told it's all citizens.
Yeah,
I
I have
actually
to-
Well,
attended the
we're
master.
citizens.
I know, but I was told no board members, no selectmen, it's all
But
citizens.
see, I attended actually the, Merrimack Valley had a master planning, and before I signed up for that course, and they said, planning board has to be on the committee, essentially, because we have to make a recommendation to,
Yep.
you know, it's on, and under state law, it's our purview, you know.
That's what I mean, yeah.
So not to have, he said that he's never seen it without any planning board members on it.
So the memo that the town manager had sent to the Board of Selectmen about it says that my experience is that in order for this committee to be effective, the members should be resident experts from the fields identified in the statute attached, and not members of our existing major elected or appointed boards. That being selected, there is no restriction as to who may be selected. So this is the memo that was sent to the Board of Selectmen. I can pass that around. So I had assumed you had already seen that. But I can
Who
gather
did you
more
get that
information
message
about the
from?
committee
There was
itself.
a memo from, in a selectman meeting that was similar to that, but.
No, but who did you hear from Merrimack
Oh,
Valley?
it was
Yeah.
a person who does one of those, it was a professional in planning, who does planning, master plans. I forget his name, but I have it at home.
Is it possible we could get a note from that person?
Yeah, actually, Jean actually attended too, and the same thing, and she said, well, you don't want the planning board to do it at a planning meeting, because it never gets done. You know,
Right,
if it falls directly, but it's always done with a couple of planning board members
Right.
on the committee, and actually, they actually said that neither the town planner nor the economic developer should chair it, because they don't have time to do it either.
yeah.
It should fall under, you know, the planning board to chair
Yeah.
the committee. And they said, you know, just, that's the only way it can get done, especially if you're rewriting the bylaws more than the master plan, because we're also codifying and rewriting the bylaws, so how could another committee do that?
Right, yep. So,
But I do have the notes on it, I can share it.
yeah, if we could just maybe
On
get
how it's
somebody
done
to,
and everything like that.
You know, either some
More information and
professional
share that.
information or a note from a
Yeah.
person would
And
be
Phil
good.
DiColangelo also attended that too,
Yeah.
that master planning
Okay.
seminar.
Okay,
Yeah, I can
He was-
definitely do more research and
Yeah.
find out more details. The only thing I was given was that form, and that form really is just about the selection committee, to select that committee.
Yeah.
So there's really, I
Right,
was
no,
not
that's
giving
fair.
any other information.
so getting to that point specifically, who would like to be on that committee?
Well, I've expressed interest, as you know, in getting the bylaws fixed, you know?
Yeah.
Cleaning them up, getting them less vague and everything like that.
So you would like to be on the
Well,
selection, I think you'd like to be on the committee, but you'd
Yeah.
also like to be on the selection
Yeah,
committee too.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's important, I think.
Because,
that
you know, what is the term? You know, personnel is policy. I mean, you gotta pick the right people.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But so I guess the question would come down to, excuse me, can the selection committee, can you appoint yourself? If that,
Or
if you
somebody.
can't, then that
Well,
might be
the
an
selection
issue.
committee isn't a function of any governance. I mean, it's a committee, so I don't see how it couldn't. We're not bound by any rules, I don't think, a selection
No,
committee.
but you could, you know, if you put your own name forward, you'd probably recuse yourself from voting
So
for
that
yourself.
would be the issue. So is it
Okay,
better to,
right.
if we know you want to be on it, then other
Right.
people be on
No, but
the
I don't
sel-
think that's necessarily
All
the
right.
problem. I mean,
Yeah.
unless as we roll down the road,
Yeah.
we're gonna get pushback from, you know, the Board of Selectmen and the town manager about members of
Yeah.
the.
I don't think we could, because state law governs this. I mean, it says that it has to fall under planning board. It doesn't
Yeah.
say it actually doesn't say anywhere in the law that we can give up that duty to someone else.
Yeah,
You know, we can't assign our duties to other people. You know, so, I don't think there's any way around it that we have to be a part of it.
yeah. Maybe you end up being like an ex officio member or something, yeah.
But still, I don't think you can function that way.
I can probably
Yeah.
do some more research if you
Yeah.
like, and if you want to postpone it until the next meeting in order to nominate those two members,
Okay.
if you'd like me to do that.
Yeah, and
Well-
my question would be, and only this, as I said,
Yeah,
is
no, I
okay.
understand
if
Laura's-
there's a
yeah.
conflict that if, we're on the selection committee to appoint ourselves, then I think we should plan for that.
Right.
And if
Yeah,
that's the
okay,
case,
that's
I would
fair.
sit on it so that I could
Well,
appoint Lynn.
who has an interest in doing it?
I'd be interested in the committee,
The actual
but not the
committee or
selection
this,
committee.
all right.
Okay, so we have we have more of that. I think we have participation, not selection, yeah. But,
Yeah, but I would sit on the selection committee.
Only if there's, I mean, I wouldn't, I think you'd be the obvious first choice, but if there's room for a second planning board member on the actual committee, I would be interested in that.
So we also need to know how many people sit on the committee.
I will do more.
yeah, I mean, the
research.
practical thing from these things is you appoint a committee, let's say, I'm making this up, you have 9 members, and after about 3 months into the thing, you need reinforcements. Okay, that's what happens, so
Well,
it's not like, you know.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring the name, I didn't really look at the agenda closely. He recommended like 11 people. He said, you need planning, you need zoning. I asked about school committee, he says no, school committee, even though school committee is a big part of the budget and master planning, he said they don't usually, his experience was they don't bring as much to that. He did say all the department heads. His opinion wasn't the same as this, that it has to be people involved with the different aspects of the town to put it together.
Well,
This
maybe you
memo-
have different parts to it
Yeah.
that.
I mean, not to say, he goes, it's an open process, everybody attends, but he goes, everybody has to be involved with it in a different,
Maybe
aspects of
there's
it.
a sort of
Finance.
almost like a advisory committee as opposed to the,
You know.
the 4 town boards and stuff like
Right.
that. Because you wanna,
And I had asked him, I said, well, wouldn't it make sense to, have a lot of subcommittees, to give each pieces away to, and he goes, actually, that's the best way to do it. He goes, give a subcommittee to certain parts, they give something to a finance committee, give something, to each, person in their experience on that part.
well,
Yeah.
as I think I told you
But-
guys,
yeah.
the last time we did it, there was a guy in town that did it, and he probably put like 50 hours a week into it. And, he was a retired guy, and he was a good manager. But that's the problem, is that, like you're saying, that department heads don't have the time to do it because they're too busy doing
Right.
their job. If you lock into somebody who's passionate about it and is maybe in a situation where they can devote the time, that's the ideal situation, but you're just not going to get that very often, unfortunately, so.
Yeah.
That memo says the last time the town did it, they had 7 members.
Yeah,
Pretty small.
yeah.
John, it says in there that one of the people would be the open space coordinator. I mean, is this something you want to be on too?
No, I mean, in the same way, I would participate and I would come and I would talk to people about it, but I just have too many things I have to do. I don't add another thing to my list, so,
Yeah, they did say it's a lot of time.
Yeah,
And they find that a lot of them only get completed 80% or so, you know.
yeah,
Especially, well, unless, when you hire a consultant, they usually get done. But if you,
Yeah.
a lot of the towns that take it on themselves without a consultant involved. Was a consultant involved the last time, John?
I'm trying to think, the time before, there definitely was, a consultant drove the thing. Last time, there might have been, but it was a relatively, more of a town effort, I think.
Okay, so then, yeah. And that's what they say too, is more the town does, the less that it costs, and, less the town does, the more it costs, so.
Yeah, yeah, so. Good, so why don't we just hold it out, let's try to find some more information, and we can go from there.
Oh, yeah, I'll email the thing I got from the class to everybody,
Yeah, that'd be
the
great.
handout, so.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion items before we?
I don't believe there's any update in terms of the water quality research, and I don't believe there's been any movement on the watershed mailer. I believe we're still working on graphics and some other information with Peter and Lynn.
Yep, we're close on graphics.
How's the kitchen?
I have to build a trash barrel holder. It has to be wood to match the cabinets. I'm actually ripping out. Oh,
But other than that, I don't believe we have any other discussion items.
Yeah, okay. Good, so I think we can now move on to Mr. Stupinski. You were lucky, Steve, 2 more minutes and we would have been done.
I did find out a couple of facts before, if you wanted to.
Yeah, go ahead,
last
give
meeting.
us some background, yeah.
So this is an application for a site plan review special permit for 9 parking spaces over at 555, 575 Turnpike, at the end of Hillside Road. At the last hearing, there were some questions in regards to town council and whether or not they agreed with the approach for the easement. Town council had reviewed the project, and again, like DPW had advised that if this moved forward, that the planning board make a condition that the easement be reviewed by town council and recorded with the registry of deeds, and we get those rights worked out. Additionally, I talked to DPW about that grassed area towards the end of the road. That is town-owned land. The guardrail is also owned by DPW, and they would be interested in, or would be interested in it, or they would entertain a discussion about moving the guardrail back, as we had mentioned, trying to move that guardrail back for some more snow storage or for some more area, as the abutters had some concerns about the tightness of that end of that roadway. So it is under the town's jurisdiction. DPW is willing to discuss those items, whether or not they can move forward with them. There's a bunch of other factors at play, but they would talk about it if that was something that the board wanted to pursue. And then additionally, you had mentioned that there was some concern about actual photos. I think Peter brought up photos. So we went out to the site and then we took some photos that Mrs. Stupinski had submitted of the area so that you could get a better view. So I'll put those on the screen so that you can see.
Wow.
Wow, that's,
I want to live there.
Brilliant.
Okay, so that's looking across the street, and that's the neighbors directly across. Oops. And that's kind of looking up the street towards 125. And that's looking at the roadway easement and the Chestnut Green, the 575 specifically, that building, and the entryway with the stairs. You can see the existing retaining wall right over there.
so that's where the 9 spaces would
So
go.
right in that circle is
And
where the 9
They
spaces.
would all be on the grassed area, not the current paved area.
They would all be on the grass area, roadway easement, but not on the edge of pavement. And then
Did-
that's looking straight up to 114. You can see the guardrail right there. And those are the trees right towards the side of the building. That's kind of looking up down the street as well. And that's the guardrail itself, and the back area right there is the grassed area. And the minutes that were included in your last packet at the last meeting were Board of Selectmen minutes where the association had approached the Board of Selectmen about leasing that particular area and putting parking spaces there. But for some reason, I don't know if it just didn't fall through or it just wasn't going in the right direction, but that conversation stopped. There was no movement forward, but it didn't really say why that was the case.
When did that happen?
That was, I believe, in 2008 or so. It was a while ago that they talked about leasing the property.
I can shed a little light on that, Mr. Chair. Right, and I, for the record, my name is Steve Stupinski from Merrimack Engineering. I think, I know that the Chestnut Green Association would still be interested in leasing that, and I think the intent was to take the existing parking lot and then just expand it literally into Hillside Road so that the access would not be from Hillside, it would be through the existing lot. And I think they could garner an additional 8 or 9 parking spaces. And the issue was that the abutter that lived in the house at the time had some objection to that. And so as a result, they were advised to probably not proceed. The selectmen elected not to proceed, thought it would not be successful. It would need to go, most likely, to town meeting to be able to grant a license. So rather than go through all that, they just sort of abandoned the idea. Subsequently, the property was sold to somebody else and who's not occupying it, and I think he was at the last meeting. In terms of the spaces that we're proposing, they would be on the grass outside the existing pavement. The trees that you see there would remain, and the spaces would be, as you're looking at the photograph, to the left, so between the walkway going up and
That was one
trees.
question I wanted to confirm.
Right.
Those trees would stay.
They're going to stay,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Steve, what type of handicapped access would there be from those 9 places to that entryway?
There'll be no handicapped access from those spaces. There's handicapped access within the development, and there's a ramp or a sidewalk that leads from the parking lot where there is handicapped spaces into the entrance, and we're relocating it, and that would still comply with the ADA requirements.
And have you discussed with them the idea that these would be just for people that work there?
Yes, and they didn't have a problem in signing them that way.
Okay.
and/or assigning them, as it might be. They'd prefer not to assign, but they have no problem signing them.
Okay. Got it. Very
Because if
good.
they start assigning, everybody's going to be,
Right,
there's too
jealous.
many parties to assign,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, why do we need that little turnaround where no one can turn around in it? Is there any, does the DPW weigh in on that?
Originally, it was designed so that there would be a turnaround, since there was no more throughway across to 114 to continue up to Hillside. However, the easement wasn't really constructed for our fire and safety apparatuses, so now, as fire had reviewed the plans, they said, we can't turn around in that existing roadway easement as it is now. They have to go up and back up into, I guess, Buckland over on that side, and then turn around the other way. So they don't believe that putting putting those parking spaces there, per their memo that they stated, wouldn't impede their fire response, just because they can't access it now as it's built.
My concern with this is we're setting a dangerous precedent. We're letting people taking out all the green space that's required in parking lots, landscaping. We require so much landscaping. Why not let them fill in the green space and put a buffer between the neighbors instead of eliminating the green space buffer? Moving that green space out to the edge, putting a strip in like we require with any other person, and move the
So
parking spaces
I-
closer.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, are you saying you can put the parking in but do it a different way?
Yeah, I mean, we're letting them take away green space, which
That's
we would never
true.
let anybody do. I mean,
Yeah.
we always make it be a net zero, especially where they've already added parking spaces in the past already. You have that area here, put the parking spaces in here, but put a strip of green space in between here, you know, maybe they have to take out that little corner where that white car is and the sign and come in this way, and maybe they have to do tandem parking spaces, which would actually, as employees, would eliminate the in and out for the neighbors too.
It is important to note that the DPW would not be in favor of anything that impedes upon the edge of pavement. So they are bound by
Which edge, though? The,
where the grass is.
okay.
So anything that would extend onto the pavement itself would not be, it would
So they-
require
the
further discussion by
Okay, so does
DPW.
DPW need that area for turnaround, or?
They don't, but it's the town's property.
Okay, I thought the record.
So it's in the right of way.
Oh, it's in the right of way, okay.
It's the town's,
The-
it's the road.
The turnaround is adequate for passenger vehicles, some smaller trucks, FedEx, UPS trucks, all of those, police, ambulance, all of those are certainly able to make the turn. It's the larger fire department apparatus that aren't able to do that. And second, it does provide access to the one across the street, and then fire access, obviously, to the one that's on the corner as well. So, you know, you'd still want to provide, you know, the ability to have an access way towards those houses, I guess. So that would be the only issue.
So I'm still, I mean.
Yeah, but see, you have the straightaway, so I don't understand how that would impact access. It'd be like any,
I'm still, it's still unclear to me.
can you
in
pull up
your-
the plan? Please. Okay, if you can blow it up to that section. Okay. See, I'm looking at the straight line. And in the area between that straight line and the arc line where the parking spaces are is that little indent.
So right
Yeah,
here.
In there?
yeah.
But that is then, that's the
But that's fine.
DPW problem.
Right.
Right, yeah.
But it's only, it's not, it's a turnaround, I mean, but it's a turnaround for no purpose, in all honesty, because you have two houses down there. It's it's wider than the street, but no different than any other road, you wouldn't have a turnaround on it.
But that's the other thing I believe that when DPW was discussing it was the fact that the guardrail there, you stop. So if cars were to continue
Okay.
down there, because what I did know and note from DPW
Okay,
is
that's
that
shallow, yeah.
the guardrail's not, guardrails are you typically put in place because there's a slope behind it and you needed to keep people from going down. But this guardrail was specifically put in place because they didn't want people to think they could go through anymore. And people have now gradually understood they can't go through, but it's just kind of the
Right.
norm to keep it there to make sure people understand that it can't be cut through.
Yeah.
So they said they could move it back or entertain that discussion, but to remove it completely was not. And again, that would impede upon their ability to have a
Okay.
regular car yourself drive down and turn
Yeah,
around
turn
instead of
around,
going in the butter's
Yeah.
driveway.
That'll put it in that. How did the meeting with the neighbors go?
I had given my card to all the neighbors, and I said I'd meet you whenever you want. You can email me or call me, and if you want to meet, we'll meet. And they never called or emailed me. So I had a meeting with them outside, and after the meeting here, and they seemed to be okay, but I gave them all my contact, and none of them contacted me.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Is there information that we're waiting on?
After the last meeting, again, I talked to town council, I talked to DPW. There was no other, and got the photos, so I didn't know if there was anything else, but I didn't believe there was any outstanding issues that you had asked for, so I don't believe so.
Well,
Yeah.
what is the percentages of the green space for the site? Does it conform?
for the entire site as a whole.
Yeah,
I don't think there is a specific requirement in that district for a certain amount of green space.
with parking, and there is some
There
probably
is,
5
there might
feet
be
and all that stuff,
some setback, on certain streets, you can't go, a
Right.
certain number of feet, but in just a regular commercial district, without it being a PRD, you're not going to really have any of that.
And this predates site plan review, so we did not permit the existing
Yeah, I
building.
mean, I think as everybody knows in this case, the fact that this was done before site plan review
Right.
is what's caused the problems. But I do think that, if you just have a regular, Steve, what zoning district is this? Is this B2?
I have that information too.
Yes.
It's a
I-
B4.
Oh, before. Yeah, I think there's lot coverage ratio, but I don't think there's a green space requirement. Most of the older straight ahead, in some cases, you actually don't want that
Right.
necessarily to have open space because it doesn't make sense. If you're downtown or something like that, you
Right.
obviously wouldn't. But if you're on something that's more remote, you wouldn't want. But we could condition recreation of some landscaping.
I think we
replicate-
should. I
yeah.
mean, I think, because, I mean, they've used every single square footage. At some point, they have to look for off-site parking. I mean, they can't keep coming back and saying that they want to take every single piece of green space and make it a parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already done that in certain sections, and it's,
Didn't they take one area that had been granted as additional parking and put up a building on it?
yeah,
Didn't that come out at that?
years ago.
No, I think what it was is, there was a variance granted as to the total number of parking spaces, I think because of the wetlands area in the back. I think that's what it was. I didn't file the variance request, so I don't know. But I would tell you that, given the zoning bylaw and the requirements for parking, it's literally impossible to pick up any more parking spaces within the site and comply with the driveway width requirement of 24 foot and to comply with the parking space requirement.
Yeah.
If you, between these buildings, if you were to pave right to the building, it would not give you any more spaces because you don't have enough for another lane. There's no way to configure this to have a driveway and then another parking lane. You'd end up with pavement for no purpose. And the same thing is in this direction as well. There's no place. And if you brought the parking all the way out to the intersection, you wouldn't, you'd be hitting, the cars would be hitting. There'd be no turning ability, and it's tight as it is now. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many cars. So, we looked at realigning this and literally trying to eliminate some of the green space between the buildings and the parking lot and picking up parking there, and there was no ability to do that. And we looked at putting in a line of parallel parking in this area adjacent to Rite Aid, but there's a stream, a channel that runs literally along the property line. The channel is the property line in some places. And from 114, they attempted to gain access across to Rite Aid. Rite Aid wouldn't release any more parking from the lease. So,
But the bottom line is the density for the buildings and the use is too high for the property. So if you can't make any more parking on the property, you have to look at renting or
Yeah, I mean,
shoveling parking
there's two
off-site.
ways to
Yeah.
look at this. Is one way to look at it is this is totally a self-inflicted problem, and that this is far less than the optimal solution, but it is a solution. The other way to look at it is, that you are working out under difficult circumstances and unique circumstances a solution that works. So, I mean,
That's what I'm thinking, is to improve the landscaping, at least some sort of buffer, I don't know where, but, improve the landscaping for the neighborhood in the buffer. I mean, you're gonna be taking away a little bit of grass again, and pavement is not the most, this is a residential neighborhood originally, and the buildings were built afterwards,
But I thought that the neighbors thought that this was a better solution than what they're dealing with now. I mean, that was my takeaway from the last meeting.
They
That
don't want-
didn't,
they-
that
yeah.
if these were designated spots for employees, that it would actually cut down on the amount of, am I
Right.
imagining this?
If people weren't illegally parking on the street, it would be an improvement. The problem is already,
Right,
yeah.
but that's the
Yeah.
problem they're dealing with.
Right.
And I mean, my takeaway was that this was a better solution for them.
Yeah,
Right.
well, that gets into, that's even sort of the third way to look at it,
Yeah.
is that it actually is an improvement.
Well, they're not here. I mean,
Yeah, they aren't here,
I mean, they
yeah.
voiced their opinion for a long time.
The fact that they aren't here says something, so.
And they're
yeah.
gonna leave the trees up. That's gonna be a condition.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, if
what-
the trees were coming down, that would be terrible.
Yeah,
One of the interesting things here, and going back history, I mean, it's one good thing about being older, right? There are actually only 4 houses on Hillside Road between 114 and 125 when this development was built. And, I mean, there were 4 houses there. And people were in favor of this development and this density at the time because they wanted to develop their property commercially. If you've been around a long time, you remember that where Buckland Road is, for example, people wanted that to be commercial. It was commercial for the most part, but the pieces weren't big enough. There were wetlands, so it didn't make any sense. There was no way to really do it. All the people got together and they created the new zone that allowed for I think they're, 5,000 square foot
Yeah.
lots that are there. So it's become a very heavily residential area, but that came post this development. So this development came before all those houses. So, all those houses came because of the fact that it was zoned business and was zoned commercial and it was being developed, but you couldn't develop their parcels effectively. So that's why they got together and changed
Yeah.
the zone.
Yep. Okay, any other questions? I think we can close this up for the next time. I don't think there's anything more we need to do. So if you could just put
I
together
have
a
a
decision.
decision drafted if you'd like to do that this meeting, or I can wait and add the condition about the trees if you'd like.
Why don't
to
you
wait.
do that? Yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds great.
And-
You'll
and
put that out?
Can I ask
with the
one more
next
question about the trees? The placement of the parking spots and how you're gonna have to plow or whatever, is that gonna affect the trees?
No, it won't. The trees will be,
You know, when you push salt and all that? It will.
Yeah, there's absolutely no snow storage on the site.
push the snow forwards. The snow will be pushed forward, so.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we can make it, we can make the
Yeah, we could
condition of the
condition, that's what I mean, I
trees,
think
yeah.
it's some of the condition, and I mean, then you may want to think about someplace where practically we could put a little bit of
Yeah, I
landscaping
think
that's
that,
on the
yeah.
property, not off-site, and then, we put a condition in terms of, even if we have to put
Maintaining
some
it, yeah.
fencing in the wintertime around the tree, then,
Yeah.
we do that, so.
or even like a retaining wall, something.
We do.
around-
We have a retaining wall designed along the front.
Around
and then-
the trees.
Right, and then the trees are above it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
there'll be landscaping between the wall and the walkway,
Yeah.
tree, and the shrubs.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Minutes?
We were here, weren't we, for the minutes? It says school building. Pretty sure we're here, right?
Yes.
December,
We were-
okay,
Oh, it's incorrect, yes, it should be for, December 6th.
yep,
I
okay.
think
And,
that was
Yeah, we did have the
rhetorical
20th
question.
meeting.
well, it's
right?
just, I know
Yeah, it
there was
should be
one, we
December
were at the school building after this opened, so I wasn't sure.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then line 90, just clarification, the vote was 4-1 in favor, 4 in favor, 1 opposed. It never says what the 4-1 is.
Okay.
Clarify it for the minutes. And that was it for me.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to
Um,
approve the minutes?
I'll
as
make a
amended?
motion to approve the December 6th meeting minutes as amended, and David seconded it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Rebecca, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Right.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we go.